Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we dig into a bunch of sources and pull out the really important bits, the insights just for you. And let's face it, life, well, it can throw some real curveballs our way, can it? Some days, maybe even whole seasons, just feel heavy. Actually, one of our sources for today, the entrepreneur, he even said some of his hardest days ever happened just this past year. So today, we're diving into something really crucial: how to cultivate resilience, real resilience, and keep growing, even when things look bleak, when there's no obvious reason to feel optimistic. Our mission here is find practical ways, real strategies to get through hardship, keep a positive outlook, basically build up that mental strength. And we're drawing on some really powerful stuff today.
That's right. For this deep dive, we're looking at a study guide called Cultivating Resilience and Progress, but also some really deep insights from a YouTube video. It's called You'll Find This Video When You Need It Most.
Oh.
It's from Alex Hormozi's channel. He's an entrepreneur, pretty experienced, very no nonsense about business and life. So together, these give us a solid framework and, lots of real stories that can genuinely help you build up that mental fortitude.
Absolutely. And this is for you listening right now. Maybe you're in a tough spot, or maybe you're just thinking ahead, wanting to sharpen that mental toolkit.
Yeah.
Our goal.
Those aha moments, right? And some nuggets of knowledge you can actually use, like, right away. So let's get into it. Okay, so the sources kick off with a pretty bold claim. Honestly, it kind of shifted my thinking. It says the single greatest skill you can develop for whatever goal you have isn't smarts or even grit, but just staying in a great mood. But here's the twist. It's staying in a great mood even when there's nothing obvious to be in a great mood about. What struck you about that? It really pushes back on our usual assumptions, doesn't it? One key thing is what they call the math of hard days. It's this idea that life follows like a normal distribution. You've got your top 10% great days, maybe 80% kind of neutral, and then that bottom 10% of really tough days. Just knowing that's normal, it helps. It shifts you from asking, why me, to seeing it as, okay, this is part of the deal. How do I prepare? How do I respond? And lets us accept challenges as just, well, a natural part of being human. Necessary even.
Accepting that math is a good starting point, but when you're in one of those bottom 10% days, how do you actually shift your mindset? The sources talk a lot about reframing reality. What does that actually look like?
Right. Reframing is about consciously choosing your lens, your perspective, even when the facts, well, they seem pretty bad. It makes me think of Viktor Frankl, Finding meaning even in the absolute worst circumstances. His line, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow."
Yeah.
And our sources give a concrete example, Alex Hormozi himself. He apparently faced this massive, totally unexpected financial bomb, a multi-eight-figure bill, we're talking tens of millions, due in 72 hours, just appeared out of nowhere.
Tens of millions in 3 days. That sounds like a nightmare. How do you even start to reframe that?
His reframe was pretty deep, actually. He kind of leaned into stoicism, Marcus Aurelius. What are you so afraid of losing when nothing in this world belongs to you? He shifted from thinking he owned these chips, these assets, to seeing himself as just a steward, realizing, you can't take it with you anyway. It's a powerful shift. And like Mark Twain kind of joked, I've lived through many terrible tragedies, only some of them actually happened. So much suffering is internal, the story we tell ourselves. The big insight here, our perception. It shapes our reality way more than reality itself does.
Okay, that's a big, almost existential reframe.
So
that helps manage the mood overall. But what about just getting through the day-to-day grind, especially during a tough patch? There's this idea of bite-sized victories.
Exactly. It's about breaking it down. Focus on just having one good day, even if you feel like you're stuck in a bad season. They mentioned Bill Ackman, the investor. He was apparently dealing with multiple crises all at once: lawsuits, divorce, losing billions. And his strategy, just get a little bit done every day. It's like compound interest, but for your mood, for your progress. Those small wins, they add up.
So what makes a good day then? Is there a formula?
Well, Hormozi shares his personal formula. It includes things like eating with people you like, lifting weights with people you like, and writing something. Simple stuff. But the key wrinkle, as he puts it, is not being in a rush, allowing yourself that space, that unhurried time for those activities. That turns a good day into a super good day. And this whole idea rests on something powerful. Your actions do not need to be equated to how you feel.
Right.
His partner, Layla, apparently has this mantra: your mood follows the plan. And that's just crucial for resilience, isn't it? It helps you get back to your baseline, back to being productive, faster, no matter how you feel right then.
Okay. Let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about pain. Usually we see it as purely negative, something to run from, but the sources suggest something pretty radical. Redefining pain. Seeing it not as the enemy, but as like the price you pay for big goals. How can pain possibly become a positive thing?
It's a huge mindset shift, really transformative. A key point from the research I mentioned is how having a strong purpose changes our experience of pain. They talked about studies where people endured like electric shocks, but when they do it for a reason that mattered deeply to them, say for their family, their pain threshold apparently quadrupled. Quadrupled!
Wow.
So pain, when it's linked to your why, it stops being just noise. It can actually become a positive signal like, okay, I'm making progress, this is worth it, not just something awful to endure.
So it's less about gritting your teeth and more like seeing pain as, I don't know, a tool, like a sculptor's chisel. The sources use that exact metaphor, sculpting the self.
Right.
Challenges pain. There's a chisel revealing the person you want to be. And there's that creator's dialogue parable too, which explains how that sculpting happens. Can you unpack that?
Yeah, that parable is great. It basically says if you ask for courage, the universe doesn't just hand it to you. It sends you monsters, situations that require courage. You want patience. You get harder work, things that test your patience. You want wisdom. You get faced with crushing failures you have to learn from.
Ah.
It's the universe giving you the raw materials and the challenges needed to build those qualities. The core message is pretty profound. A good life isn't an easy life. A good life makes you into a good person, and that, my child, is a hard life. The sculpting happens through the hard stuff.
And what's the payoff for going through all that sculpting, all that hardship? Especially if, the immediate result isn't what you wanted.
That's where this idea of eternal work comes in. The changes inside you, the growth, the lessons learned from navigating that adversity, that stuff is permanent. It stays with you even if the external thing, the project, the business, whatever, fails. Hormozi talks about losing everything, twice, but he emphasizes you only start from scratch once.
Right.
After that, you start with experience, and that experience makes you, as he puts it, never at the mercy of a man with an opinion. Those internal shifts, they last. They create what the sources call memory dividend.
Memory dividends, I like that.
Yeah, it's the strength, the lessons you gain from past challenges that keep paying out, keep serving you, long after the event itself is over.
That sounds like a really powerful way to deal with negativity from outside, other people's opinions. And speaking of that, the sources had a good reframe for handling criticism, even nasty comments.
They did. A simple, powerful one. Just reframe any criticism as, he lives his life in a way that I would not prefer. That's it. It creates instant distance. And Alex's dad had this very vivid analogy from his own divorce. He said, just because someone hurls a steaming hot pile of negativity your way doesn't mean you have to catch it.
Yeah.
You choose. You choose whether to let it stick to you or not.
That gives you back control, doesn't it?
Totally. Because ultimately, hardship doesn't define you. It reveals you. It gives you proof of who you are, and it builds those memory dividends that pay forever. Alex even shared a personal story about fraternity hazing back in college. He said, remembering how he endured that became like a shield for my emotional effect when facing difficulties later. Those memories of already having overcome stuff, big or small, they strengthen you for what's next.
Okay, so reframing helps the mood, redefining pain helps us face challenges. What about really pushing ourselves? The sources bring up this really interesting idea about competitive advantage. It's not just about being smarter, but about simply being willing to endure discomfort longer than other people. Why is that such a powerful edge?
It's a critical insight, really. Success very often isn't about being the smartest or the luckiest person in the room. It just comes down to sheer persistence, sticking it out, most people. They actively avoid hard things. They bail when it gets uncomfortable. And that creates this huge opening, this massive opportunity for anyone who's just willing to keep going to stay in that discomfort zone longer. That willingness alone builds a kind of advantage that just compounds over time. It makes you really hard to beat.
It really challenges us to dig deeper, doesn't it? Layla's mentor had that really sharp question during a tough period. Are you settling or are you moving mountains? It forces you to think, what level of effort would I really bring if, say, lives depended on it?
Exactly. And the point made in the sources is that those highest levels of effort are so rare, you can unlock most things in the universe with it.
There.
It's about tapping into that reserve strength. Like everything depends on it because, honestly, creating your best life kind of does.
So what stops us? If the potential payoff is that huge, why don't more people operate at that level?
Well, a big part of it is that disconnect between knowing and doing. We talked about this a bit. Like most people know what it takes to get a six-pack, right? Diet, exercise, consistency.
Sure.
But they're not willing to endure the required pain, the discomfort, the sacrifice. The sources make a useful distinction here, too. They differentiate sadness, which often comes from feeling like you lack options, and the solution is knowledge, learning what to do, from anxiety. Anxiety often comes from having too many options, but no clear priorities. The solution there, make a decision.
Ah, okay. Knowledge versus decision.
Right. And the path forward then becomes pretty clear, even if it's hard. If you don't know what to do, learn. If you know what to do, do it. And if you're already doing it, never stop.
And crucially, none of that depends on how you feel at that exact moment.
Exactly. That's the core of resilience in this view. It's defined simply as how quickly your behavior returns to your baseline after something negative happens. If your actions don't change, if you keep doing the plan, then the event, emotionally upsetting as it might have been, didn't actually matter in terms of impact. True resilience is being kind of unbothered action-wise. Just keep moving forward despite the emotional weather.
Right. The last big piece of the puzzle seems to be about perspective. Gaining that ability to zoom out so you can keep going. It sounds like taking charge of your own story.
It really is, yeah. A powerful takeaway here is to be both the story writer and story listener of your own life. Only you know your real intentions, what was going on inside your head during those tough times. So the advice is, make your life story epic. Judge yourself on the effort, the attempt, not just the outcome. If you tried everything worthwhile, even if it didn't work out, you can still look yourself in the mirror and say, good job. You gave it your all.
I like that. And to help with that zooming out, the sources offer 3 specific frames. The first one is the veteran frame. Can you explain that?
Yeah, this one's interesting. You imagine the negative thing happening not just once, but like 1,000 times in a row. You keep imagining it until the thought of it just doesn't bother you anymore.
Okay.
And the realization is, if it wouldn't bother me after the 1,000th time, then it's a choice for it to bother me now the first time.
Ah, that puts the control right back in your hands, doesn't it? From victim to agent.
Exactly. Then there's the cosmic relevance frame.
Yeah.
Basically, putting your problems in the context of the entire universe, all of human history, it tends to shrink them down pretty fast, makes them feel less monumental.
Right. Perspective. And the third one, the grandfather frame, seems focused on gratitude.
Mm-hmm. This one's really practical. You imagine yourself very old, maybe frail. Then you mentally wake up back in your current body, whatever age you are now.
Yeah.
The idea is you feel this sudden, profound appreciation for your health, your energy, just the ability to move easily. And the sources shared that anecdote about Layla's mistaken cancer scare. It wasn't good news, but it wasn't the worst news. And that shock inadvertently made her incredibly grateful for what she did have. It kind of operationalized that frame in real life.
That's powerful.
And underlying all these frames is a simple but really empowering truth. Your life every day exists as evidence that you can handle everything that has come your way. Just the fact that you're here, listening, that's proof you've endured. You're capable.
That's a great thought to hold on to. Now, speaking of giving advice, there's this thing called the Solomon paradox. We're apparently much better at giving wise advice to others than to ourselves.
Right. It's weirdly true.
So the sources suggest using a Solomon frame for yourself. Basically, imagine having a conversation with your future, say, 85-year-old incredibly wise self. Ask that self for advice on your current situation. It lets you tap into that objective, logical part of your brain without needing to expose your vulnerability to someone else or deal with their potential biases. It's like self-therapy.
And that ties into being resourceful, learning to use what you have. Even things we normally think of as negative, like maybe feeling shame about something. If that feeling of shame motivates you to take positive action, like, say, going to the gym, improving your health, maybe living 20 years longer then, was the shame itself bad?
Interesting point.
Maybe we don't need to perfectly label the emotional fuel. The focus should just be on, does this feeling lead to actions that get me closer to what I want? If yes, maybe it's useful, regardless of the label.
Okay. And on the flip side of using things, we need to be careful not to let negativity spread, right? Like that myth, bad things come in threes.
Exactly. The sources warn against that strongly. They say, isolate that cancer as fast as possible. Don't let one setback, one bad event bleed into other areas of your life and pull everything down. That often happens when people react poorly, lose self-control after one hit.
Right, contain the damage.
Which brings us perfectly to that Buddhist parable of the first arrow versus second arrow.
Yes, I remember this one.
The first arrow. That's the initial pain, the bad event itself. It's often unavoidable. life happens. But the second arrow, that's our reaction. The rumination, the blaming, the feeling sorry for ourselves, all the extra suffering we pile on top, that arrow is optional. We choose whether to shoot ourselves with it.
We choose how many arrows hit us.
Precisely. And it's a good reminder. Most serious thinking doesn't require that much time, but worrying can take all day and all night. We inflict a lot of those second, third, fourth arrows ourselves.
Okay, one last point. When you're really in a tough season, just grinding it out, the sources offer a really encouraging perspective. Maintaining is winning.
Yeah, sometimes just holding your ground, not losing territory, is the victory for that period. You don't always have to be making huge leaps forward.
And also, maybe zoom in sometimes. Instead of labeling a whole year bad, look at the actual moments. Maybe a tough year was still, say, 85% okay, or even good moments, and only 15% truly bad ones. It gives a more accurate and probably more positive picture. Hashtag tag outro. So, wrapping this all up, what does it mean for you? I think it comes back to that first big idea. Maybe the single greatest skill you can develop for anything you want to achieve is learning how to stay in a great mood, even when there's no obvious reason to be in a great mood.
And remember the value of that eternal work, the internal changes, the person you become through navigating hardship that stays with you. That's the real prize, the proof of who you are, forged by experience, regardless of what happens externally.
So we really hope you'll think about how you can apply some of these ideas, these frames, these perspectives in your own life. How can you build that unyielding resilience and become more of the person you aspire to be?
And maybe a final thought to chew on. As you go forward, how will you consciously choose not to be hit by that second arrow of self-inflicted suffering? And what intentional memory dividends will you start creating today to serve as that shield for future challenges?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into resilience and building a meaningful life. We wish you all the best on your journey of growth and discovery. Keep going.